Welcome to 3 Distinct Knocks. I'm Nicholas Harvey.
I'm Taylor Klein.
And I'm Jeriel Smith.
This episode we have the Southern California Research Lodge and the magazine of Fraternal Review. The sitting master of this year is this brother, and he has offered to tell us about the magazine and how it got started and what you can expect from it. So please.
In my third year as master of the Research Lodge, and I joined it in 2014, and magazine, I'll say that the Research Lodge is one of the oldest ones in California. It was started back in the 1960s. But when Doug Russell, who is our editor-in-chief and was my predecessor as master of the lodge, came along, and he first became the master. At that time, Sanford Holst, who's a well-known author, was the editor of what was essentially a newsletter. And Doug became the master and started doing editing. Then that gave Sandy the opportunity to leave the lodge and go research his book that he's working on now. And Doug became the editor-in-chief and was simultaneously being the master. And we moved the lodge in 2015. We went under dispensation from where we were in Orange County to the South Pasadena Lodge. And then in January of 2016, I became the master of the lodge, largely in order to take the burden of administering a lodge off of Doug so that he could work full-time on the magazine. And at that time, the February issue of Fraternal Review, and I don't have a copy of that one here, it was on the Masonic apron. Mm-hmm. And we publish the magazine monthly, every month except for January. And so we went to this format, and we developed a strategic plan and based it around the magazine. We chose for our mission statement the Southern California Research Lodge, restoring Masonic education and observant practices. And one of our ideas was that the magazine would be kind of a superstructure for us for Masonic education. So it's designed so that each issue could be used by a Blue Lodge for a unit, in effect, of Masonic education.
Awesome.
And we started out with the Masonic apron. Mm-hmm. Our second issue was on the ashlars. The third issue was on Masonic Rite. And we went right through, and 2016 was our first year of doing this. We now have an annual that has all 16 of those in a single binding. We'll do the same thing for 2017 later this year. We regularly go to the communication of the Grand Lodge in San Francisco that's every October, and we set up a book-selling booth and use it to promote the magazine, promote the lodge. One of the things that we do is we wanted to create a place where gradually we're having more original writing in it. Doug Russell, except for on issues where we have a guest editor, such as this issue, The Flower of Life, we have somebody that this was a talk that he gave at a Masonic Restoration Foundation meeting 2017, and we liked the talk so much we got him to curate the information in here. And the way the magazine is set up, this one, I wasn't called the guest editor, but this one was based on the research I did for the talk that I give the most frequently, which is called the Purpose, Principles, and Practices of Observant Freemasonry. So most of the content is excerpted from both classical resources like Pike and Wilmshurst and those kind of guys, and then a lot of current Masonic scholars like De Hoyo, Morris, also Andrew Hammer. So this particular one, which was March of 2017, was based on the research I did for that topic. So they all start out with the master's word on the inside or the editor's word.
Cool.
And so it's either me as the master's word, Doug Russell as the editor-in-chief, and Dago Rodriguez, who's a past master from South Pasadena Lodge, where we're now located, is the managing editor, and he does all of the layouts and the artwork, curates the images. Then another thing that we do here is we have a table of contents, and we have this section called, in this case, March dates, and we have maybe 8 or 10 different lodges that are active in Masonic education. So they send us, and that's my editorial position in this, is I'm the editor for the education calendars. Sometimes there's only 3 or 4, sometimes there's a dozen.
Yeah.
But that way, this issue, if you subscribe to the magazine for $25, you get this in your email on the 1st of the month of February through December, and you get a link to a PDF, and you can print it, you can share it. We don't copyright anything.
Right.
One of the things that we encourage, all of us do talks at local lodges as well, and one of the things that we encourage is if you want to excerpt something out of our magazine, put it in, say, your trestle board or something like that, you're free to do that.
Awesome.
And so we have about 1,200 or so people that receive the magazine monthly electronically, and everybody gets that.
Right.
And then we have about 500 and some that also pay an extra $10 a year to get this in the mail, and it comes in that first week of the month. And we have a number of regular features. There's usually a cover story that gives kind of an overview, and we have every month we have an interview. This month, in March of 2017, we had Andrew Hammer, the president of the Masonic Restoration Foundation, who better to talk about traditional observance. Although, as I observed to you when we were talking earlier, the MRF doesn't like to use the traditional term anymore. They just call it observant Freemasonry.
Right.
In fact, Andrew, he doesn't even capitalize the observant.
Right.
Being an old-fashioned guy, I do, but we also have a section on pop culture. And it always has a featured book. In this case, it was Andrew Hammer's book, Observing the Craft. We also always feature a podcast, and we're looking forward to maybe having an issue where either one of you brothers' podcasts could be our feature. And we also usually have a video of some sort.
Very cool.
And then we have a number of articles in each one, and we always have a final word. In this case, it was Sean Iyer, the editor of Philalethes,
Sure.
who gives a final little observation that kind of ties stuff together. And so the ways that we promote Masonic education is through publishing this. Several of us do original writing for it from time to time. Several of the members of the Research Lodge are also frequent speakers, and if a lodge wants to have a Masonic education program, and they're looking for speakers. We have a list of all the people that we've listed before, and we can tell them, this guy can talk on these subjects, this other fellow can talk on these other subjects. So we have that. We have an opportunity for people, if they can write a short original article that fits one of our issues, then we'll publish that in there. And we encourage them to give talks themselves. A lot of times the research for doing an article is a start for somebody that hasn't been doing Masonic talks before, and can get them going on it.
And that's one of the things I really loved about when I was looking through the magazines, is that you can take any one of the pages with the information on it and absolutely stand up in lodge and just give 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you guys want to, in the lodge, and be able to teach something to the brethren, the new ones, the old ones, the entered apprentices, all the way to people who are just looking at Masonry. I like it because it's not the traditional, like, stuff we've heard 1,000 times. We're like, yeah, George Washington, put the cornerstone of America. But it's actually really fascinating stuff. The magazine itself is very high quality.
Yes,
For the price that $35 a year to get this in your mailbox is absolutely worth it.
The people that only get the PDF version actually subsidize the print version, because the print version, it would be $35 to get 11 of these, and it costs us more than that to mail them out with the printing.
Right.
These cost around $1.50 to print. They cost another $0.50 to mail.
Yeah.
And it's an expensive thing. We used to have about 700 members in the Research Lodge, but the way a Research Lodge has to track its members in the California Grand Lodge rules meant that, for one thing, if you are a subscriber and you don't renew, then at the end of the year, you're no longer getting the magazine. But if you're a member of the lodge, and that's your dues, then suddenly the iMember listing of you says not in good standing for the Research Lodge. Which isn't like if you're not in good standing with a Blue Lodge and all your other Blue Lodges have to observe that. But it does mean that you can't hold an office in a lodge.
Right.
And so when we did that, we did this changeover, and it was largely misunderstood. A lot of people really took offense at being changed from being a member to being a subscriber. But now we have only about 70 members, and now you have to actually, one of the things they said was you had to affiliate with a regular affiliation with members of the lodge signing. So now in order to affiliate, you've got to actually come physically to the lodge. We meet quarterly, and we have our stated meetings quarterly. We meet the third Mondays of January, April, July, and October. Mm-hmm. And then every month on the second Saturday, we start the day at 10 o'clock in the morning at South Pasadena Lodge, and we have an hour-and-a-half class on Masonic meditation. And that's led by Doug Russell. And then we have about an hour to 2 hours, the editorial board meets, and then the executive committee meets after that. So we only have tiled lodges 4 times a year, but we also have 12 monthly meetings where we're doing the planning for these.
Do you guys, if I'm correct, I believe you guys bring guest speakers also, right?
Well, the lodge that we're at is very fortunate to be very well situated financially. We have a terrific lodge that's the second and third floors of a building on Fair Oaks Avenue in South Pasadena, and the bottom floor has 4 different kinds of beauty shops. And those guys support the lodge, so we have usually about 9 lectures a year, and we had Andrew Hammer there. We are going to have, we're right now meeting at Guthrie, Oklahoma, and most of the leadership in the Research Lodge are 32nd degree Scottish Rite Masons, most of us with the Pasadena Valley, which is just a couple miles from where we are. But the top leadership of the group, Daga Rodriguez, the managing editor, Doug Russell, the editor-in-chief, myself, John Salidos, who's right now the junior warden. We're all also members of the valley here in Guthrie. And we're also members of the Academy of Reflection, which is a Masonic meditation, and I know you brothers have been coming to that as well.
It's a great experience if you ever get a chance. Go to that.
One of the things that we emphasize, particularly me, in my talk that I give on observant masonry, we emphasize the idea that meditation is a traditional observance. There are several places in the craft degrees where you are told to contemplate on something. I believe it's in the second degree where you're introduced to Boaz and Joaquin as you enter the lodge, and your attention is drawn to the globes at the top of each of those pillars, and you're advised that contemplating on those, one of which is a terrestrial globe and the other is a star map, can lead you to understanding the geometry of the universe.
Right.
And so we constantly make the case that meditation also, if you're going to get involved in education, then what you're looking for is to delve much more deeply into the history, the traditions, the symbolism, and so each one of our issues is on something like that.
That's awesome.
And meditating on those things. For example, this morning at the Academy of Reflection meeting, before we started having the degrees for our reunion here, I led the meditation this morning, and we used the seed thought in there that the 3 great tenets of Freemasonry are brotherly love, relief, and truth. Well, when you meditate on that, you start seeing levels of meaning and interaction between the symbols. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite issues that we did in 2016 was on the letter G.
Cool.
And we made I wrote the master's word for that particular issue, and I pointed out that where we're really used to seeing G is in the east above the master's station, and in the middle of the square and compasses in the standard thing like my ring has on it. But you could put anything in the middle of the square and compasses and have it then be judged within the meanings of those 2 symbols together. Mm. For example, this is our original logo for the lodge. It might be easier to see on my pin, which is a representation of that, and you've got the square and compass and then the lamp of knowledge in the middle of it. And we found with doing some meditations leading up to that and meditating on the letter G, that besides geometry, which is the main thing that's emphasized in the ritual as a meaning, and of course God, which isn't emphasized in the ritual because it's only in the Germanic lodges, related lodges,
right.
and the language that G is the first letter of God. Another one, the one that came up the most frequently among us when we were meditating was it standing for gnosis, which is knowledge rather than belief. And the idea of knowledge and belief supporting one another, I've found, has been one of the major understandings that I have come through meditating on Masonic things. Another thing that we get into quite a lot of our issues are on Masonic history. So our current issue is this one, which is on the Royal Society. Right. And it traces the fact that in the 1600s, the Royal Society came about in England by a group of scientists, and if you know your English history, they were just coming. They were just in the middle of what started out going back to the split away from the Catholic Church that came about during the reign of Henry VIII in the 1550s. And they had been having constant religious wars. And so the idea of not talking about religion or politics, which is one of our rules that we have in our Blue Lodges, that actually started with the foundation of the Royal Society, because these scientists wanted to start building on the new learning and these were guys that were really into the scientific method, and but half of them are royalists and half of them are not, and so they didn't want to have to. What they wanted to do is be able to work with the scientific method. Sure. And the motto in the coat of arms for the Royal Society, which is pictured in our magazine, translates into "Don't take anybody's word for it." So it was taking that Enlightenment idea that stuff should not be based on superstition or dogma, but should be a search for the truth using scientific methods. And there was a lot of the people that were in the Masonic lodges in the 1600s were people that were part of who formed the Royal Society. A lot of the Royal Society members became Masons through that, and that was very instrumental in what led to the Grand Lodge of England coming about in 1717. Another one of our issues was on the Grand Lodge origins. This was in June of last year. And we go through all of that about the Grand Lodge origins. We get another perspective on it when we do the Royal Society. Right. And then our previous issue was this one on Anderson and Desaguliers. This is one where I wrote the Master's Word on this and started out by pointing out that every Mason has heard of Dr. James Anderson, the Constitutions in 1723 and then again in 1738. Not so many people have heard of John the Sophist. He's got a really tricky middle name. It's John Theophilus Desaguliers, who was actually responsible for a great number of the elements that were in those constitutions. And these guys really formed a very effective partnership. And so you could group together a half a dozen of our issues that are really on the history stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's any number of them that are on symbolism. One of the talk that's most frequently given by Brother Douglas, our managing editor, is on the art of memory. And so all of the research that he did for that talk is reflected in the articles that are in this May 2017 issue. And another thing, Doug is really very academically astute. So you'll see it. Almost all of these articles are excerpted from something much longer. So you've got the attribution note at the bottom of each one of these, which allows you to then go online or go to the library and get the full article. And we have it in mind to have it be eventually where we would have a section. We're still thinking about whether it would be a members-only section on our website that would give you access to the longer articles as well.
So like a Wikipedia type version.
Yeah.
If somebody joins, are they able to purchase or at least get the PDFs for the previous months?
The way that it works is that because we don't have the infrastructure that somebody like Time Magazine or People Magazine has, where you get a one-year subscription that starts in May and it ends the next May.
Right.
Our subscriptions are all annual subscriptions. So if what you're getting is the PDF and you join later than January, then when you join, you get all of the PDFs starting with the February one, because that's very easy to send to you.
Right.
The cost, if you're sending these individually, is about $1.43 it's as much as printing it to send it through the post office. So the way that we have it is that if you're subscribing to the hard copy, then you only start with the next issue, but you get backfilled with the PDF, and then if you happen to be proximate enough to the research lodge that you can come and be there in person, we have an overprint all the time. We sell these typically for $5 for a print issue. Everything costs $2 more if you order it on the website because of the handling and that kind of stuff that's involved. Or another thing, and as a matter of fact, you were able to take advantage of this. You just gave me an application, and you will be, with our May issue, you will be getting the magazine in the hard copy print. But because we were here face to face this weekend, I was able to give you the current issue, April, which is the Royal Society, the prior issue, Anderson Desgoulier, and our February issue on Masonic secrecy. When you read this, one of the things you'll notice is that a lot of the illustrations in this were photographed by Dago Rodriguez, who took his Scottish Rite degrees 2 years ago here at Guthrie.
Awesome.
And he took a lot of these photographs. And this is such an interesting issue. We usually have a tagline at the bottom, and for Masonic secrecy it says, "What is truly secret?" Because we found out that through our experiences talking at different lodges and things like this, a lot of people don't understand what is secret and what is not secret.
Right.
You do not have to be a Mason to subscribe to this magazine.
Sure.
It's specifically designed so that somebody that's Masonic curious, somebody who's thinking about whether they might want to look into Freemasonry, and if you go on the website and things like that, the first thing that you're inundated with is all this anti-Masonic stuff. So like one of our issues that we addressed that in was July of last year, and it's anti-Masonry and exposures.
Awesome.
And it turns out that when you go through the magazine, you learn that most of what we know about the original rituals is only known to us because of people that wrote exposures
on it.
So in a way, anti-Masonry has given us a lot of what we know about the earlier periods of Masonry. And we also try to show how a lot of the most popular ideas about an anti-Masonry, we debunk a lot of those. The most famous one, of course, is Leo Taxel and his book about anti-Masonry, which when you read the article that's about this, you learn that really he was trying to mess things up both with the church and with Freemasonry. He was just a mischievous guy, and he actually copped to the fact that this thing that he wrote was a hoax. He just made most of this stuff up.
Right. Yeah, I'm really enjoying reading all of these, and they're short reads. For a lot of them, they get right into the meat of what you want to learn. And then, if you're interested, like you said, they have all the information at the bottom to where you could go and learn more about it.
You could read an individual issue in about an hour.
Yeah.
But what we hope is that each one of those articles that you read is an opportunity for you to pursue further on the ideas that are expressed in that particular one.
What's really nice about the way it's set up is that you could take one issue, you got multiple lodge meetings, spend a little bit of time discussing it over a course of a month.
Right.
Yes.
And so this way you're not upsetting your worship master by talking for 30 minutes when they don't want you to. It's 5 minutes over and over, and you still get the whole meat of the subject.
Yeah.
One of the things that we started last year is for lodges, they can order a triple subscription of the hard copy, and they it costs $90 instead of $105, and a lot of them will archive a copy, put another copy on in their library where people can access it, and like at my other Blue Lodges besides the South Pasadena, at Culver City Fauché, where I used to be the director of their education program. Now, they get the third copy to use to stimulate Masonic education at the lodge.
So I think, Taylor, I think you've been reading it longer than I have. What are your thoughts on the magazine, and how do you think it would be a good idea for lodges to start using this?
Yeah, I really love this magazine. I think it's probably one of the best ones out there, particularly for lodge use. I like the fact that it's centered around a particular topic so that you're not getting a hodgepodge of different ideas going around. You can kind of look at the same thing from a lot of different perspectives. I find that to be really useful, particularly as a lodge education officer when I'm trying to teach newer guys how to think about something. Giving them a magazine that skips around from entered apprentice to master mason, back to entered apprentice. Every other page, you get maybe one thing for a fellow craft. They don't really get a good idea of what to do. They don't have a good structure to it. So the way this is structured is really nice. And because it is so focused on promoting Masonic education, it it goes beyond just you read this and you get education. It shows you ways that you can get better education by going to these other resources, podcasts, videos, books and the notes. This one in particular is a great one if you're looking to start a new lodge library. It's a Masonic books. You have like 30 books in here, I think, somewhere around there.
We polled our readership in 2017 in the spring and early summer, and then this was published in September. And we asked everybody to send us their top 10. Mm-hmm. And so we did a thing like if you were named number 1, that was 10 points, 9 points, 8 points, 7 points. And so we're about to do a similar thing this fall, and we're going to ask everybody to just send their top 5. In this case, it's going to be esoteric authors.
Very cool. And
so what we did with this is we published the top 25. Then we had the top 10. We wrote either original reviews for it, or we would excerpt a particularly cogent review of the book. And then I actually wrote a lot of the content for this magazine. For example, there's an article in there about the authors that were most often done, which not surprisingly were Albert Pike and John Robinson.
Yeah.
And so we had an article about those two guys. Oh, and Manly Palmer Hall as well. And they're really interesting stories because Manly Palmer Hall intentionally put off becoming a Mason until he had written The Secret Teachings of the Ages and that sort of thing, because he wanted to be objective when he was writing that book. John, I just said his name.
Robinson.
Yeah, John Robinson is interesting because he actually was a scholar of the Enlightenment and got drawn into writing about Masonry. And by the time he wrote the third of his books, one of the things he did in it was to announce to the world that now he had become a Mason, doing the scholarship and writing the books.
That's actually it. I remember that legend. I did not know.
Really?
Yeah.
And then shortly after he became a Mason, he passed away at a fairly early age. But it's a lot of fun, but it's really a lot of extra work. It's a lot easier to research stuff that people have written than it is to do that much of the writing yourself. Another one that's almost all original content, and I'm sorry I didn't bring those with me this time. We had a special edition this past December, which was the Star Wars issue. And one of the things, one of the things that comes to you, very salient thing, is how all of these different spiritual traditions have all of these similarities. And one of the distinguishing things about Blue Lodge Masonry, and even more especially Scottish Rite Masonry, is that we gather the wisdom of any of those sources without, we view, Masonry views all religious teachings to be primarily allegorical.
Right.
And this, in fact, we've addressed in some of our issues, we came across a word that's called mythstory, which is saying we're looking at the myths and the history both. And a lot of what we think of as history isn't historically verified. It turns out that most of the Bible is not historically verifiable.
Right.
that doesn't keep it from being probably the most influential book in Western civilization. And there's so much wisdom there that's universal. In fact, the degrees we watched this morning particularly address that, about how in fact, the last one that we saw is about how the Christian teaching has a much broader application than just to Christians.
Right.
And so we think that one of the great contributions that Masonry has to make is to pierce through this idea that happens, that's part of the most deadly conflicts throughout human history, is people that are willing to die for the idea that their concept of God is absolutely true and everybody else's is not.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
And the view in Freemasonry, and it's especially articulated in detail in Scottish Rite Freemasonry, is that whatever God is not fully knowable, but whatever it is, it's true for everybody. So all of the traditions are a way to have communion with the Almighty. And if we all respected one another's religions, then as we commit ourselves to doing each one of these Scottish Rite degrees that we just saw this morning, then that we could see as a great move forward for humanity. And two of the most salient things for me that came out of the issues on Anderson and Desaguliers and the Royal Society is how Masonry introduced a lot of and developed a lot of the Enlightenment ideas about trying to base things on an objective view of things. So it's really the Royal Society, Freemasonry, and those kind of institutions that created the concepts like liberty, equality, fraternity, the free press, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, those kind of things. Those are Masonic things. All the fantasies about that somehow or another we're running the world are way off base, but in terms of having human progress be furthered by these various egalitarian principles, I think that's the real legacy of Freemasonry. Just as we found that membership in Freemasonry kind of peaked in the 1960s,
right.
and as it started falling off, the tendency became to make it faster, make it easier for today's busy man. And what we found out was that not only did it not stop the decline in membership, but it was more frequent that people came in with high expectations, they took the degrees, that was it. There wasn't the study, there wasn't the follow-through. And we're firmly convinced, and we're dedicating ourselves to trying to prove it true, that what will draw particularly the young men of today into Freemasonry and will make them Masons that actually come to Lodge, really get involved, is by going back to the best of our traditions, to do full form proficiencies, to study the history, study the philosophy, meditate on the symbols, and to make it a really life-changing thing to become a Mason. And we're starting to see, I think, all around the country, but we really see it strongly in California. We're really having a renaissance of new lodges, a lot of them the smaller lodges where there's a real emphasis on attendance, and a lot of times back when I became a Mason, you come and you visit a lodge and they give you a petition.
Right.
Now most lodges, you go to a lodge and they expect you to come for
right.
several months, and one of the things we do, because as you know, it's absolutely verboten to recruit people, but we talk with our prospects, and if we think that there's another lodge in our area that's a better fit for them,
Sure.
we say, go visit this lodge too, get to know some of them, get to know some of us, but we want you in the right lodge.
Right.
And there's one of, getting back to the idea of observant practices, there are a lot of people who think that they're caught up in the superficialities, the more formal dress, using things like incense and chain of union and these kind of things, which are all really kind of frosting on the cake. The real cake is about this dedication to going deeper into the meaning. And in particular, like one of the things that I talk about when I talk on this subject is I would really like to ban the use of the word sideliner. There's nobody in a degree that should be sitting on the sidelines. In this magazine on the Fraternal Review, there's a wonderful quote that I use in my talk by Andrew Hammer, where he talks about that everybody that's there, not just the people that are actually conferring the degree, but if everybody is concentrating on this, is really getting it. One of the things, the techniques that I use, I try to identify with the candidate
Sure.
as they're going through the degree. I re-obligate myself interiorly while I'm watching them. And I find frequently that I learn something new about the degree almost every time.
Almost every time.
Or not maybe something new, but I get a little more of the facets. All of these are these multifaceted jewels, and you got to turn them over and look at them from all different kind of angles. And Andrew talks about how if you do this, you can create the kind of environment where you're doing your ritual practice from a soul level,
Right.
not from a personality.
Yeah.
A true initiation.
Yes.
True initiation.
Yeah. True initiation, that's what it is about getting more in contact with your spiritual self.
Awesome. And the sideliner comment I really like, because it's like saying the manager is the guy who did all the work. If you're like doing a construction job and the manager is the guy, how much, I'm a sideline guy, I'm out there carrying bricks around and stuff. Okay, you may have come up with a plan, you may have told me what to do, but it's not as though I did nothing.
Right.
It's
Still did something. You're part of it.
You're still part of the lodge, you're still a brick in the superstructure of Freemasonry, you're still creating the bond of brotherly love.
Right.
The Smiths all together, so.
Yeah.
So, my battery's definitely going to die soon.
Okay.
So let's definitely.
Shall we sum up then?
Yes. So we'll sum up. So, website, Facebook. Where can people get more information?
Well, our website is theresearchlodge.org.
Oh, nice.
You can go on the website, you can subscribe to the magazine.
Here is a question I know everybody is going to ask. Can you sign up and pay with credit card?
Online you can.
Yes.
And the only difference is that online, everything that if you bought it in person, it costs about $2 more.
That's fine as
And
long as I don't have to mail it back.
that's just for our administrative costs.
Totally fine. I don't know why we still have Masonic websites where all they expect you to mail in a check. It just drives me crazy. So awesome.
Yep.
$25 a year, you get 11 issues in your inbox. $35 a year, and you get a fantastic. It really is really great quality.
It's high gloss paper, it's
big
well
words
bound,
too.
it's easy to read.
Very easy to read.
Pictures
Awesome.
are not blurred out at all.
Yes,
It's actually it's high def. It is a beautiful magazine.
Yeah.
The actual pictures are really
Fantastic. Definitely
it's good.
screenshot some of these. So awesome.
We don't have this is our trestle board,
This is
and
the
in
trestle
fact, And last October at the Grand Lodge Communication, cited as the best trestle board of lodges with a size
It's almost cheating.
It's technically cheating.
and there is a way that that's kind of unfair.
It's definitely
because
unfair.
this is not a bunch of news.
So you guys actually aren't the only people who do this. I know the Cross Keys is like a magazine newsletter from a lodge in Scotland that does something very similar to this.
Yeah.
So I would actually encourage just a lot more lodges to do something like
Absolutely.
this.
Well,
For the benefit of the craft.
there are 5 research lodges in California. We're the only one that does a publication like this. That's our particular niche. Other ones do they have their own signature kind of stuff, and
Sure.
we're working on communications, little synergy among the lodges. Particularly now that I believe John Cooper is now the head of the Golden Compasses in Northern California. He and I met each other when we were in Demolay.
Wow. That's awesome. So
we-
we will definitely put links to all of this in the description of wherever you're hearing this. If someone wants to get in contact with you about
Yes.
this, where's the best place for them?
The best place for them is JERIELSMITH@gmail.com.
Cool.
I also get email if you send it to master@theresearchlodge.org.
Oh, yeah. Well, we thank you for coming on. I'm really surprised my battery has still lasted this long, but it has to be done in a second now.
And I really want to thank you as well it's been a highlight for coming to Guthrie this year, to have met both of you, and to do this is just a real bonus as well. Anything to support the work, and I know that's the purpose of your broadcast or your podcast. The same thing is spreading Masonic light. That's what we're all about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it.
And thank you too, Taylor.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
you too.
Thank you.